the Damtion take on leadership?
So, I mean, for me specifically, especially now in my career, after being in the Army for 17 years, is like, I think what's more pertinent to me nowadays is servant leadership, especially it. Taking care of the guys, but taking care of them in an out front mentality. I know we always say in the Army, don't ask your guys to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself. But something that has always been super important to me, and I used to tell my platoon in 3 Alpha this, I work for you. You don't work for me. And I think that's huge because it's true,
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today my guest is Dan Damtion. And that's a name that is well known within the 75th community, especially around here at Fort Benning, largely because he's 6'6", weighs 245 pounds, and you can't miss him when he comes in a room. Dan took a unique route into the regiment. He came from the conventional Army into the regiment and has been very successful in the 75th, which is not always the story when people come from the outside units at more senior ranks, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I had the pleasure of being Dan's first sergeant in Delta Company, and that's the first time I met Dan. And as everybody that listens knows, I came from 1st Ranger Battalion, and it's always difficult when you grow up in one battalion and you go to another battalion to take a senior leadership position. You don't have any allies in the room. You don't have any of your reputation to go on. Nobody's there that knows how you grew up and the things you've done. So you've got to earn that all over again when you go to a new organization, and you need friends in that organization. So a quick story about Dan is I took the company on July 7th, a few years ago, and I was in there in my office that first day, overwhelmed with how I got this position, how I ever ended up here in my life. And this giant mass of a man comes down who I knew was my reconnaissance platoon sergeant at the time. And he comes in my office. It's late. Everybody's starting to clear out and go home. And I'm in there trying to take in the magnitude of the moment. And Dan, he just says, "Hey, boss, what do you need?" And I knew at that moment I had an ally in the room, that Dan was going to be there and he's going to be somebody I could rely on and count on to help me be successful as a company first sergeant. And that is, for the 2 years that I was there, Dan was there, and he's one of the main reasons I was successful. One of the best platoon sergeants I've ever seen. And it's not because he just did what I told. It's because he always gave pushback, and I like pushback. I saw a lot of myself in Dan because with friction, that's where stuff is made. I appreciated that. He's been very successful, and we're going to talk a little about. He's gone through some mental health struggles and some growth and some things that are kind of a stigma in the community I just came from, the community you're in. And we're going to just help smash that today. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to have a little bit of fun. We'll see if we both agree that we want Matt Stafford to win the ring because he's a lifelong Detroit Lion.
Do.
I think that's probably both of our goals because I'm a Georgia fan. And I know Dan cheers for Georgia too. So we're cheering for Matt, even though they crushed my Niners last week. So I'll turn it over to Dan, let him introduce himself, and we'll get on with the conversation.
No, thanks for having me. I'm Dan Damtion, originally from Aurora, Illinois. Played a lot of sports growing up, specifically basketball and baseball were my two go-to sports. From there, enlisted right outside of high school at 18 years old. Had an opportunity to have a pretty unique moving around career path from starting off in 4th ID. And then moving over to the 101st Pathfinder Company, and then the 82nd for a small stint into the 75th. So currently married to my beautiful wife Alexa, just recently married, and 3 beautiful babies that reside inside of Illinois. But that's me.
So that's Dan in a nutshell there. And I can't believe I didn't think to congratulate you on the wedding that I was just at. And it was a beautiful spot. And if you don't know, you can get married at the National Infantry Museum. I had no idea. That's a great spot to do it. And I had a great time down there. And congratulations on that.
I appreciate that.
You took a more traditional route in the Army, I would say. You do what more people do. You come in and you go from unit to unit. And did you start out in mechanized?
I started off in 4th ID in a mechanized battalion with some Bradleys and some other. It was kind of unique, considering I wasn't expecting to go to a mechanized unit, but it allowed me to have some perspective on that as well.
So when you came in, so my brother was in the Army as a mechanized. Was there still the 11 Mike when you were there, or were you attached as an infantry, like 11 Bravo still?
So it was a 11 Bravo, but I remember like my platoon sergeant being like an 11 Mike, but I think that's after they like started getting rid of some of that stuff. So
Yeah.
I think we were all like, they even then at that time were 11 Bravos.
And then you go from Hood. Was it a Hood?
It was Fort Hood, Texas, brand new stood up brigade at the time, in support of like, surging units into Iraq.
Yeah.
So.
And you go from Hood to Campbell, which is that if I was going to spend time outside of the regiment, that's probably one of the places I'd want to go. I've heard great things about the unit. I like the area. And then from Campbell to the all the way
Fort
82nd, the home of the airborne there. At what point did you look or see the regiment, or what piqued your interest to wanting to come over to the behind the brown fence, as we say?
So I think it was the first thing that piqued my interest was I had always heard of the Ranger Regiment and Rangers and everything like that, and I knew specifically that I always wanted more in the Army because I'm very goal oriented, especially when it comes to new challenges and everything like that. But my first interaction was in Baghdad in 2006, I believe. We were doing like TCP work and stuff like that, and you would see, the Rangers driving around or just being around and stuff like that. And I knew that there was like this, vibe that they gave off, that it was something special, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of that. So. And
you came to, were you a staff sergeant when you came to the regiment?
I was a staff sergeant from the 82nd, and I had just got done with some platoon sergeant time in the 82nd, but I knew that I was willing to do whatever I had to do to be, staff sergeant inside of the 75th.
So I know there's going to be people that listen to this that knew you from pre-regiment years, and there's always those that are like, the ones that we always run to say, I was going to go to selection. I was going to do this. So for those out there that listen, that are thinking about that now, as the Army's in a big change coming out of Afghanistan and stuff, what does it look like coming to the 75th?
For me, it was, I finally just had to, I knew that, my conventional time, whether it was in, the 101st Pathfinder Company or the 82nd, I knew it was something that I wanted to do. And there was like always some nerves with like leaving and doing something that, you're not too sure of, because, obviously it's a very tight esprit de corps unit, and coming from the outside can be very challenging. And like looking at the 75th from the outside, it's, it looks like a beast that, that you're not 100% sure if it's going to work out. And I think for me, the biggest thing was just like getting over that and just saying, you know what, we're just going to go for it and give it our all, and hopefully it all works out. And hopefully I'm good enough to continue, like make it for one, and to continue to serve in that unit.
Yeah, so. And I'll say he belongs here. He should have. I had no idea he came from another unit, or an import, as you're called, when you come from the outside. I thought Dan was born and raised here like all of us, because he fits right in and fits the mold. And it just goes to show, I think, some of the misconception that there are some really, really great NCOs in the regular Army that we just don't see because we stay in our own space the whole time. And you know that there's some of the best NCOs out there that would absolutely crush it in this organization. They stay out there, and the Army needs them too, right?
Yeah, I think some of it's got to do with guys scared of the unknown, and also comfortability. Yeah. Guys just get comfortable where they're at, or they they have their own leadership challenges, and they don't want to leave their guys, or and it's never a good time to move. People don't want to PCS. So I think that our regimental recruiting cell is probably doing a pretty good job continuing to find those NCOs as well as others. But yeah, my biggest thing is just go do it and try it. There's never a good time to, in your career to try new things because you just get caught up in stuff, but you just got to rip the Band-Aid and go do what you want.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's a great segue into the first kind of question that has drove this whole first season, as I call it, of this podcast series is what would your definition of vulnerability be?
Vulnerability meaning to me is like essentially just recognizing that maybe like you don't know everything, and there's new challenges out there that maybe that that you just haven't faced before, and recognizing those challenges and or like spots in your career or your life or any specific thing like that, and in facing them, knowing that like maybe I'm not going to be the best at this right away, but I could be if I just challenge myself.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I think we find ourselves, you and I and a lot of people we know, we're A-type personalities. So admitting to yourself that you don't know everything is hard. It's hard to chew on sometimes, but it is vulnerability. Just doing that and asking for help. Yeah. And then eventually you become out better and you do become the expert on whatever you're trying to master there. Yeah. So in that, you spend a lot of time deployed, right? Mm-hmm. Through your conventional time, through the regiment time, and that's taxing on the family. It's taxing on your mental health. Mental health is something, going back to that A-type personality culture, we don't talk about as much. We're getting better about it, I think, as a community as a whole. But you've had your own struggles with mental health and trying to rebalance and be the best version of yourself. And just tell us a little bit about that story and how what brought you to where you are now in a better place than you were probably 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think for me, it was at the end of, my last deployment. Obviously there were some changes. I was moving into a new position inside of the community that was very different from where I was just at, in like inside of a leadership role. And I think by not necessarily working on myself and in which is actually, now that I look back on it, required, especially after getting back from, deployments and just constant, riding the train. I think it was important for me to realize that, like, I was starting to go through some changes, and I think the word that we use a lot is like starting to feel burnt out a little bit. Yeah. And I think, I could have done a way better job of taking care of myself, especially in the off work hours. And I just didn't do that. And then, once I did start to struggle, I know we always talk about this stigma of, asking for help could lead to like, certain consequences or anything like that. It was actually the exact opposite. Now, looking back on it, and also in the time, I was worried about what other people would think, specifically inside of the regiment. And that wasn't the case at all. It was something that I built up in my own head, because all of my leadership was there. All of my, Ranger buddies and family, they were all there. It was all built up in my head, and something that just didn't really exist that I thought existed. So
I think you hit on something very important there. Is I think we've all gone through it. I've gone through my own stuff, and I've shared that. But we do build it up in our head. Yeah. We're worried about what others think, and then when we do actually go through it, then we really reveal who our true friends are and the people that are really there for us. And it's the same people that are really there for you that you were most worried about disappointing or letting down. And there will be a few that you do separate from because they don't support you and aren't there. Sure. And I think from our perspective, that's probably the time that person needs the most help, right? To need you to reach out to him. So absolutely, that helps get rid of the stigma and helps us just become better people, better leaders, better husbands, better fathers, and all of that. So I'm glad you've been as open as you have inside the locker rooms and the coughs about
Sure.
your journey, and I know it's helped others. And not only with that, you're in a large population, sadly, within the Army, especially over the last 20 years with the deployments and stuff that had a marriage fall apart, or in
Right.
some cases we know two or three, and some of the people we know, and you have kids, from your previous marriage,
Right.
and I'm sure that had because that all kind of compounded at the same time. It seems like everything comes to a head at the same time with us, and how are you dealing with that as a father, somebody out there who's listening, who's going through divorce or is divorced and trying to maintain a relationship with their kids and maintain a career? How does Damson do it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the biggest thing for me is realizing that I obviously could have done a lot better with, especially communication, with my ex-wife, especially at the beginning, or I'm sorry, the middle and the tail end of the marriage, that you know, obviously everything compounding together and stuff like that made things very difficult for me. But at the end of the day, what I realized is the most important thing for me is the time that I do have with my kids needs to be as best quality time as possible. Because them living in a different state, it's very difficult, and just trying to maintain that phone communication and all of that other stuff to just be the best dad that I can be from a distance. And that's what's important to me is that, you know, just doing what you can as best as possible from a distance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I'm from a broken home. I know what that's like to have dad, all the way across the state. It's just, it's not ever going to be perfect. It's never going to be ideal.
Right.
But as long as you're trying and you're putting forth the effort and you're having intentional conversations with your kids and stuff, I think, you'll come out better than some do on the other side. There's no ideal scenario, right? And it's tough, but don't ever stop trying, right? Don't
Right.
ever stop trying, I think, is the key. Where I've seen some guys, they just kind of stop or gave up, and they end up spiraling back down into a place where they had climbed out of, because they stopped. And if you ever have trouble, ask for help, reach out to some sort of
Yep.
source. Somebody's going to help you to where they can help you get through the struggles, I think, is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and also too, like not every day is going to be a good day. Even now, like I don't think anybody has like wakes up and has the best day ever in the world. But just realizing that you surround yourself with great people. Obviously, I have great friends inside the regiment. I have great friends outside of the regiment. That I keep in close contact with, and then obviously my wife. She does a very good job with just checks and balances, I guess. Everybody goes through stuff, and at the end of the day, I think good self-reflection on something, and just coming out of stuff, and just figuring out a way each day, to just keep driving on and being happy. And right now, that's what's working for me, and I think it's great.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something right there. Is taking care of yourself is something that we're not always great at. I know I've gotten better at it. I try to do some intentional things to where,
Yeah.
well, like I say, what am I going to do for Yuma today? Because it's so much easier to put other people first, right?
Yep.
Whether it's the people that you're leading, your family, and then put yourself on the back burner. And at some point, we all reach a point where we got to put ourselves first. Is there anything that you do specifically to try to just make sure you're taking care of yourself?
Honestly, it's just some tools that I've learned as far as like you know, obviously trying to get the best sleep as
Yeah,
possible.
absolutely.
Takes care of yourself, and then just doing things like for me, keeping yourself busy and. With like I like to obviously right now I'm in college and stuff like that, so I think it gives your mind a break a little bit from the other stuff that's going on as far as work and stuff like that, but also like doing activities outside of work that I enjoy.
Yeah.
In whether that's hiking around in Pine Mountain or going to the gym and just doing me and just trying different things too it's helped a lot too, different activities and stuff like that. I think that all of that stuff's important versus just like, you know, getting off work and only worrying about work and stuff like that, taking work home. that hasn't been very beneficial to me. But doing other activities outside that's just fun for me is good.
I think you're right. People I've seen in our community or any community, any business leader, they do when you see them to start to go downhill, they're doing one of two things. They bury themselves in their work.
Yep.
They take it home. They leave the house when it's dark. They come home when it's dark, or they go to the bottle. Yep. Whether it's a pill bottle or the alcohol bottle, and they just spiral down, and they isolate themselves. They separate themselves from the pack. And it's tough. So definitely find ways to take care of yourself. As much as a past Yuma would have laughed about maybe meditation or journaling or going out and just doing some box breathing and looking at the horizon. As you get older in life, you realize that stuff actually does help. And there's a reason, there's science behind it. And they tell you, and it's part of that, just getting over that stigma stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's definitely, those things are huge. I know I've done a few of those activities in the past and it's been really beneficial, especially like, if you're stressed out and you want to get your mind right for a second. I think that's super important.
Yeah. And you can do it not only for in the moment. If you're in a stressful situation like we've found ourselves in many times over the years, there are ways to calm your nerves so you can be your best self in an operational environment. So we'll transition back to some of the Army questions. With your conviction, you did some of the long, the 15-month deployments, 12-month deployments.
So I did 3-year-long deployments.
Yeah, three 12 months. That's a long time to be gone. That's like a blink. And knowing the guy you are and the people that I know, you wouldn't trade that year though for anything because of the experiences you got and the people you got to spend it with and stuff. But there were also probably some challenging moments. I know there's been some challenging moments in our organization because I've seen them, I've witnessed them with my own eyes and you. But all those years that you've been in, what was your most challenging day so far in the uniform?
I think my most challenging day in uniform was my 2012 deployment with the 82nd. We unfortunately, we were in a relatively bad area, and one of the other companies in my battalion had just taken a good amount of casualties. And I got a random call in by my first sergeant and said, "Hey, you're going to go take this platoon in a different company." Obviously, very shocked at the moment, just because I was already well invested into my platoon inside of my company, and I was it's one of those things that is just like okay, but realizing that they had just one of their platoon sergeants had gotten hurt, and the platoon sergeant that I took over that platoon got hurt, and they also took a death and a few other casualties, and the going into a different platoon or company after a significant event like that was super challenging. I remember it was like we were driving from our cop over to the other company's cop, and I was thinking in my mind, like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? Like, these dudes have no idea who I am. And like, they just took obviously significant amount of casualties with a death. And it just wasn't, it was going to be super challenging in my mind. And I showed up, and it was exactly what I expected. Obviously, the platoon that had taken those casualties were pretty upset for obvious reasons, and I had to figure out very quickly how to lead that platoon immediately. Under their circumstances, and that was tough, and it was tough because they didn't know me. We weren't going anywhere. That was like, I think, within the first month of being overseas on that 6-month deployment, and I knew we just had to get out of the wire as soon as possible. And I remember, I think we went out the very next day on a just a regular routine patrol, just to get everybody back on that horse and try to move on. but trying to get guys to move on like that quickly, it's difficult. They responded actually pretty well. And there was a lot of great guys in that platoon, and we ended up pretty successful that deployment. But taking over a situation like that was definitely the hardest thing leadership wise that I've probably ever had to do.
And it was probably hard because you just wanted to make sure you gave them the leadership they deserved, right? It wasn't hard because of the area you were in or
Right.
the casualty, but because that platoon deserved
Right.
it, right? And you're coming in from the outside
Right.
and don't know what to expect. And I think you say something great there. As when we were both of I were younger in the military, we've been part of that get back on the horse mentality. And at the time, I probably hated it when I was either in it or dealing with a casualty or you know, a bad night out, and they were trying to get us out again as soon
Right.
as possible. But as I grew up and became that leader, making guys get back on the horse, I realized the importance of you have to keep going. You can't stay and wallow in that unsuccessful night or that loss. And I think it's understated how important it is to keep moving forward during a time of like that when you're going to be deployed for another 6 months or you're going to be there for another 90 days and you know you probably got at least 90 more missions like we used to do back
Right.
in the day. Did you find it the same way?
Absolutely. Honestly, the same exact way. And and it also made me realize then too, like how important it is to try your best to learn your boss's job because I was a squad leader in that platoon beforehand, and that was my first time being a platoon sergeant in general. Minus like when you're covering down for a month or two or something like that. But and just realizing that I wanted to be the best leader I could be for them, but I had to get out of that squad leader mentality like instantly and go take over 4 squads.
Yeah.
So recognizing that like always trying to know your boss's job was huge for me as well for that.
That's a great point because we both heard that preach from every sergeant major or first sergeant is learn the job of the guy in front of you. And unfortunately, in most scenarios over the last 20 years, we've seen that play out numerous times where it was either the team leader that was all of a sudden was the squad leader or the cherry squad leader that just found himself to be a weapon squad leader the next day. Yeah. How important it is to know the job in front of you is great. And that brings us great into just leadership kind of discussion. And what would your definition of leadership be, outside of a boardroom where you're trying to get promoted? What's the Damtion take on leadership?
So, I mean, for me specifically, especially now in my career after, being in the Army for, 17 years is like, I think what's more pertinent to me nowadays is servant leadership, especially, taking care of the guys, but taking care of them in an out front mentality. I know we always say in the Army, don't ask your guys to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself. But something that has always been super important to me, and I used to tell my platoon in 3 Alpha this, I work for you. You don't work for me. And I think that's huge because it's true. Yeah. When I go to work, especially in a leadership role, like it's important that I do everything I can do to make my guys successful. And even more so nowadays, more outside of the professional realm too is the personal realm. Like, how am I setting my guys up for success? Like in the outside world, and I think that goes into like, whether or not they're transitioning, am I setting them up with the right resources? Like, how am I best serving my guys, in my unit? Because it all plays into it. I think that's super important. Not, to like get away from, I think it's obviously, taking care of the guys. I think that, that's not just like, for me, like, hey, we're all going home at 1400 today. I think it's well more than that. Are my guys set up for this, that, or whatever, whether it be professionally or personally.
I think both of us have seen the shift kind of in the Army and the regiment to where leadership has now gone outside the brown fence, right? It's not just how good they are at live fires or how good they are at PT. It's how good are you at life? And are you ready for the next phase of your life whenever, because the Army is going to end for all of us, right? We have a whole more holistic approach to our leadership now than ever as an Army. Because I think we're realizing if we take care of our people, they'll stay, right? They'll hopefully stay around and stick around, because I think more guys and girls, their purpose and what they love is really inside the Army, but we don't sometimes as leaders really are great at highlighting that and illuminating that this is a great place. The Army's been a great career. I wouldn't trade my career for anything. It's just a more holistic approach to leadership, if you have a take on it.
No, I think it is. I think it's huge, especially, what you said with like, taking care of guys and hopefully keep them in. And I think some of that is because, like, if, for example, we just sent guys to like a public speaking course, and those kind of things, like it's helping develop them for, their next job in the Army. And if we're doing that, that's going to make them successful, in the Army, which I think in turn helps them, realize that, like, hey, I can continue my service and continue to be successful inside the military. So
I agree. So I've asked this question of everybody that's come on so far. So all your experience, if you could go back and if you could grab that Private Damtion by the scruff right there and give him some advice, what advice would you give him?
Oh, for me specifically, especially now, I didn't start my education, civilian education, until pretty much the last part of my career.
I hear that, yeah.
And I'm in my last college class right now before my bachelor's, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like I could have knocked this out like years beforehand. Yeah, I think it would be that, and because my classes specifically, especially doing an organizational leadership degree, while some of it is just busy work, some of it also is really good material and helps develop you. So I would say that, especially for, the enlisted, right? Obviously it's important for everybody to get educated, but I feel like by now I would have a doctorate if I would have just started it young. But that, just so you don't feel so compressed as your years go on, especially moving into a platoon sergeant role or a first sergeant role, it's not a great time to be doing college. So I think I would say that, and I think I would say that especially back then, it's okay to continue to keep challenging yourself in other ways. I know for me specifically, it was always important to, reach the next goal or reach where I wanted to be, which was ultimately in the 75th. But I think it's okay to challenge yourself in different ways too, whether it be like different, civilian education or other classes too, to just to broaden yourself as a person, instead of just like very strict, just like, hey, this is like all infantry stuff. You know what I mean?
I think you hit because I feel exactly the same way. I finished my bachelor's from the University of Charleston as well, fellow Eagle over here, about 2 months ago. So I think we miss an opportunity as younger service members, right, to kind of explore who we are as people, right? We get so wrapped up in the job of being a paratrooper or a ranger that we don't really think about what's going to happen next. And I missed the opportunity. And people always give me a hard time. Like, I don't want to go to college. I don't want a college degree. I don't need a college degree. No, you don't. But if you want to be an electrician, the Army's a great place to dabble in that, have the Army pay for it, and maybe you don't want to be an electrician, or maybe you don't want to be a plumber, and maybe you do want to get an MBA. There's a missed opportunity there by a lot of service members to really explore themselves for the next phase of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think obviously that's super important, and I think the Ranger Regiment's doing a really good job with those initiatives right now, whether it be trade school or any other way to just set yourself up for something that's not necessarily just Army.
Yeah.
And I think that makes us grow as people. And I think the regiment is doing a really good job with that right now.
I agree. Dan, it's great to have you on here. We're going to end this with a little bit of a gimmick here with the random questions. We'll reverse roles. You'll ask me a couple questions. I'll ask you two. I have the interview deck here. We have no idea what's coming out of this deck, right? My son got a question about what he thought when he was going to be pregnant. So having a 13-year-old answer that was interesting. So we don't know what's coming. I'll let you go first.
Okay.
And we'll alternate. We'll ask each other two questions.
Okay. Was there something you asked for repeatedly as a child, but you were always told no?
Oh, as a child, I'm sure there was. What would it have been? Yep. I remember I had a friend I played basketball with in high school. He had all the G.I. Joe sets, like all the tanks and all that stuff, like kind of like today's Legos was like the G.I. Joe stuff back then. And I really wanted that. And it was fairly expensive, I think. And my mom was just like, nope, you're not getting it. You're not getting it. So to counter off that, I just decided to become a G.I. Joe myself and left mom back into Mexico. And I remind her that all the time. She's the reason that I went and chose the career I chose, because she wouldn't get me. I couldn't do it as a child, so I had to chase it as a career. So I think that would be the one thing that comes into my mind right off the bat. Okay. What is one surefire way to grab your attention?
I would have to ask my wife. No, I'm just kidding. I would say the best way to grab my attention would to probably challenge me.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's especially with our type of personalities is just like, anytime there's like a competitive thing, like I'll beat you in this or that or something like that. I'm pretty competitive in nature. Yeah. So I think that would be it for sure.
That's funny. It brings up a good story that I'll tell about you. So as you grow in the Army, like I had, and I just retired, things start to hurt in your body more. So that's why you see us old guys, we kind of break off from the pack and do PT on our own, because then we can do what doesn't hurt. And I remember one time I was in the gym and Dan was in there, and Dan would always do this to just people all the time. You'd look around, see what they're doing, and just go in and be like, I'm doing this workout with you. Yeah. And he came in one time and I was doing some burpees with a plate and pressing it over my head. And Dan, he just walks up, he's like, what are we doing? Let's do it. And I was like, God dang it. Because I know I'm going to have to try to compete time-wise to Dan. And we sat there and we crushed it for a while. But that is definitely a way to grab anytime there's a competitive space, you're there to prove that you are the top dog. And I bowed away and went and licked my wounds. But that's definitely a surefire way to grab your attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, one more.
One more. All right. Would you choose a shorter life and be super rich, or a longer life and somewhat poor?
Well, I guess I'll go with a longer life and somewhat poor, because it's worked to this point, right? I'm pretty happy with it. I think now that I have kids, especially, I would choose the longevity over anything, especially since I've seen, my wife's mother passed away years ago and doesn't get to see the grandkids now. So I definitely take the longevity over money any day.
Me too.
What instantly makes you not like any other person, or makes you unique?
Ooh, makes me not like other people? I would say, not liking other people. I kind of I normally like everybody.
Right.
I would say, just not caring about something.
Right.
I mean, not that you have to care about everything, but I would say just Not caring about the right things. I think that's the best way. It's a pretty broad question. But I would say not caring about the right things. That it's especially when it comes to like people
Yeah.
or like subordinates or something like that. I think it's important.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think if I had to switch it, just I always hated the guy who always had to ask a question, even though a question never needed to be asked. Like the guy that needed to always be heard in a meeting or the training meeting, who always had a point, even though there was no point to be made. Right? And prolonged an already long meeting. That person drove me nuts. And to close it out, I'm going to throw a curveball at you that we didn't discuss, and I just kind of thought of because you're a sports fan.
Yep.
I'm a huge sports fan. Sports is one thing that bonds soldiers when we're deployed. That's one thing that you constantly talk about. So we just had Tom Brady retire. Many people calling him the GOAT, right?
Yep.
I'm a Jerry Rice guy. I still think Jerry I would take him as the GOAT, as an overall just football player, athlete. Give me your top 3 greatest football players of all time now that we're in the post Tom Brady area. Who would you take? Who are your top 3?
I would say Lawrence Taylor.
Oh,
I would say Barry Sanders and Walter Payton.
and I can't argue with that. I can't argue with it. And the reverse, I would go Tom, Jerry, and probably Lawrence Taylor. He was a freak. If you're a football player, a youth football player, go look up the film. If you play linebacker, of Lawrence Taylor in his heyday. It was a different league back then. Yep. And he was just mean and nasty. And he told you what he was going to do to you. I love watching that. So it gives me chills when I think about him. Yep. Dan, great to have you on here. I appreciate you coming on here and do this. I love you.
Thank you.
I love you like a brother. I wish you the greatest success the rest of your career in your new marriage. I'm excited to watch you grow as a Ranger leader, a husband and father. And I just appreciate you coming on here. And for everybody else out there listening, make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll catch you next week. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.